Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Amit Cabrera podcast. I'm here with a very special guest. We are here with WEJO CEO, Richard Barlow. Richard Barlow is the CEO of WEJO, which is not only a Palantir SPAC, but it is a public company in and of itself. So it's really, really exciting, at least from my perspective, to be interviewing the CEO of a public company. I've never talked to the CEO of a public company. So very, very cool stuff. Richard has done a bunch of interviews with people in the Palantir community, obviously because Palantir has a very close relationship with WEJO. They've introduced products with them. They've obviously invested in them. And he's going to be talking a lot today about the relationship with Palantir, but he's also going to be talking about what WEJO does, which when I found out about it around 2 months ago, I would say in early January, I was just so happy that Palantir invested in you guys because it seems like you guys are creating an amazing product. So before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about like who you are and how did you become, like for the people that are just watching, how did you become a CEO of a public company? How did this all happen?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So it all started 10 years ago. Well, even before then. So I previously founded a lead trading platform in the UK called LeadX, LEADX. And I set a business up in 2004. And the idea was, and this is sort of at the very early days where Google, say with the pay-per-click campaigns, you couldn't refine search results as accurate as you can now. So a consumer would go to a consumer credit issuer, like credit card provider, or would go to an insurance provider, and the advert would be for a 35-year-old with no convictions, no DUIs, etc. And the consumer who would actually arrive on the landing page from, say, Google, from a Google Click campaign would be a completely different profile. Right. So wouldn't hit the underwriting criteria that the insurer, the carrier, or the consumer credit issuer wanted to actually get. So I came up with this idea that there could be a real-time platform that could take, and there's a sort of a you'll notice there's a theme in my career of real-time data processing. But I came up with this idea of taking real-time data from all these providers in the UK and providing a new home. So you'd go in with the differing profiles, so differing underwriting criteria that an insurer would want to insure on, or differing underwriting criteria on credit. You go, and the bank, rather than rejecting you for a loan or a car insurance provider giving you an uncompetitive quote, a high premium quote, they provide that lead through to the platform. And it starts with me, myself, and I, and then I had a CTO, and we drank a lot of Stella Artois in the pub, and we coded together, and we built this platform. And that platform, year one, turned over £1 million, then turned over 3, then 6, then 9, then 12, and within 18 months, that business always made a profit. We only ever raised €2 million of capital, sort of second year. That was it. Then that business was always profitable within 10 years, so by about 2014, business had done exceptionally well. It was then about 600 people, and I wanted to take some time out. So I love cars, always loved cars, love the smell of petrol, and was sort of thinking about what my next step was in my career. And came across this idea of connected car, and basically what I saw was, and I was sort of having a play racing a few cars around tracks, and I saw telemetry in vehicles, and telemetry being real time data from a racing car, whether it's engine temperature, whether it's oil use, whether it's suspension movements, whether it's the ratio of steering wheel change. There was all these sort of data outputs coming from a racing car. And I realized back in about 2012, I sort of started playing with this. I realized that actually that same data was available from all vehicles. So it sort of was a little kernel of an idea about this idea that actually there was going to be this point where it wasn't just going to be racing cars that could be outputting this data, it could be all vehicles. So I decided in 2014 to found WEJO, WEJO, and I put some of my own capital in. I didn't draw a salary.
Did you sell the previous business?
I started selling down, started selling down in 2014, and that business kept scaling. And so I put some of my own capital in, didn't draw a salary of WEJO, and I raised some capital from some high net worths in the UK, and started paying to go to industry events. So I went to a load of automotive events saying, I've got an idea, but I'm a startup. I think this industry needs a platform to receive live data. And it took a long time to get traction. And, and you have this classic sort of startup conundrum of you've got to prove you're capable of delivering on a data asset that's never been released before.
Right.
So, and you've got to prove your technology works when you've not got access to the data.
Right. It's hard. It's kind of like social media apps. It's hard to build a really good recommendation engine like Instagram or YouTube if you don't have data coming from consumers that you can match with the recommendation engine.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first 4 years, we were like this sort of chicken and egg, as you call it.
Right.
And the big win for us was winning a contract with General Motors back in 2018. Well, actually, we won our first contract in 2017 as a private company. And I remember GM saying to me, one of the meetings said, look, we should be giving the deal to this blue chip organization, but we're giving it to you. And they said, because look, no one's ever seen this data asset before, and your assumptions are more robust than anyone else's. He said, and the guy said to me, you probably made them all up, but they're robust assumptions. You've got a robust hypothesis, and that's better than anyone else has done. And that was a real sort of milestone for WEJO in the early days, was getting the commercial backing from GM, and then we started winning contracts with other OEMs as well. And then GM approached WEJO and offered to invest in the business as a private company in 2019.
Right.
And then we kept scaling. We kept adding more and more OEMs. And then last year, I decided to take WEJO public, and we went through the classic sort of. We considered sort of the other sort of avenues out there, whether it's raise more private equity. And we decided the right route was to go down the route where we raised the pipe with investors, including Palantir and Microsoft. Right. Microsoft don't normally do public investments, so it was a great endorsement for Microsoft to back. Right. GM invested again. And so we've had this incredible support from one of the world's largest automotive companies. And then we've now got this new support from software companies such as Palantir, such as Microsoft. Right. And we're now a public company where we announce our earnings tomorrow. For the first year, and since we've been public, we've announced our first committed equity financing facility where we raised $100 million. So it's been an interesting first 4 or 5 months on the public markets.
But before we get into the GM thing, I want to talk about that. When you started this lead generation company in 2004, I'm assuming you were a smart guy and you probably could have got a nice job. You could have become a consultant or something like that. Like, what was the internal philosophical motive to just be like, screw it, let's go code at a bar and start a company?
When I was 12, I wrote an email to an editor of a computer magazine, and I said I could write better articles than his own journalists, and the editor said, go on then. So I started reviewing games, and then I became what was the disc editor. You remember those floppy disks? Mm-hmm. So I used to then liaise with games companies to get samples of their games on the floppy disks. I became the disc editor. I was reviewing games. I then got a broader remit to review hardware, and I remember earning about £6,000 in 1 month when I was about 15.
Wow.
A lot of money for anyone, and this was 25 years ago. Yeah. And it was so, and I used to go to bed at 10 p.m. when I was 14, 15, wake up at 2 a.m. and work from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. every day writing for this magazine in the UK. And,
are you trying to say your work ethic and hustle was always profound, and you were never going to just get a regular job? You were always going to start something.
Yeah, I'm that classic. I didn't go to university.
Really? So after high school, what did you do?
I went straight and worked for a company, a telco, and I was their web designer, and then I got a job at another company, became technical director, and after about 4 years of working for other people, I decided I needed to work for myself. So I set up this lead trading business in 2004. When I was 25, and went from, and I've been through the highs and lows. Always wanted to work. I always wanted to be founder and leader of organizations. And I'm saying I've been through the pains of the 2008 crash, been through the current pains of COVID, and you have to make some tough decisions. So yeah, but it all started back at school. That classic, I think it's the stereotypical thing now, isn't it, for tech companies where the founder CEO doesn't do anything normal. But yeah, I'm afraid I tick those boxes of. I started by writing for computer magazines and learnt my trade and frankly learnt, when you're that age, and I was at computer exhibitions trying to convince computer companies to lend me their hardware or lend me their computers to review. You've got to have a degree of confidence about yourself to do that.
The reason I ask is because, I mean, you're the CEO of a public company, and it's been so fascinating to me as I've been getting into the stock market over the past couple of years. Like, it's not easy to be the CEO of a company. It's not easy to be the CEO of just a brand or anything, be an entrepreneur. But then to take a company public, I mean, and we were talking off camera, how many regulatory disclosures that exist. The entire world is watching you. A stock price quite literally means billions of dollars in wealth moving up and down. So, that is an immense amount of responsibility, and the level of confidence, the level of sales, the level of storytelling, communication that an individual needs to get there. I always wonder, was it innate? At 12 years old, were you writing articles from 2 to 6 a.m. to like actually build that work ethic from an early foundation? And it seems like, it was, and it seems like for most people,
you won't know. I don't think you'll know this. There's a show called Howard's Way. It was in the 80s in the UK, and it's all about this guy who runs his business, and he runs a shipyard, and my grandfather, he had a business that factored cheese, wholesale cheese. So I saw my grandfather, I saw these shows, and I decided I wanted to set up my own company. But you know what, it's about having an amazing team around you.
Yeah.
Things I've learned, it's about communication. It's about having a team. My job now is strategy and communication, internal communication within the organization, to make sure everyone's talking. And we're a scale up. We're scaling up our revenues. We're scaling up our people, and it comes down to I've got to make sure I've got the right people around me. And I've got an incredible CFO. I've got an incredible chief commercial officer.
How many employees does WEJO have?
Over 300.
Okay.
So yeah, over 300 is our number. We've got people we've got people now permanently in Japan. We've got people over Europe, people in the UK, huge people in the US. So we're a truly global organization.
So let's go back to GM in 2019 when they invested in you guys. Now, you said they invested because they believed in your robust hypotheses about connected vehicle data. What exactly were those hypotheses that allowed them to put money into you guys that were relatively unproven at the time? Well,
so it's interesting. I was on an analyst call yesterday as an audience rather than a participant. And this senior analyst was telling the OEM industry that none of their cars were connected. And it was bizarre, to be honest, to hear this really well respected analyst. His view in automotive was that no, there's no cars connected out there. It's clearly not true. But actually, I think the reason where they've got that facts from is that the idea of cars being connected is still not mass market, still not mainstream. But OEMs have been doing R&D, have been trialing these things for years. So with GM, and I won't share anything that's confidential, but they shared with WEJO their data schema, and we went through the schema and we advised about what needed to be changed, improved, that actually would improve the potential value of the data. And the value of data isn't just fiscal. The value of the data can be to derive insights, can be to provide better experiences to the customer. But we went through and we sort of said, okay, well, if you want to build this profile of product, you need to consider these sensors outputting from the vehicle.
Right.
So we went through a very consultative process with GM, and we do it with all OEMs, around the value of data in vehicle. And the value of data in vehicle is fiscal, but it's also driving insights for the OEM's organization, actually building better experiences for the consumer, and also potentially saving the OEM money. So, we're working with certain OEMs now where we help them understand about the performance of, say, their drivetrain and what parts they could be replacing to save money or to provide a more efficient sort of product for the consumer.
And when you mean connected data, you mean like WEJO is able to work with OEMs or just any car manufacturers, any car companies, and give them massive amounts of insight around how those cars are driving. And that leads to the fiscal, economic, and potential logistic concerns for those companies. It gives them better.
Yes, we process. So we've had data from over 16 million vehicles. We process 16 billion data points a day, 17 billion data points a day. We peak at 500,000 data points a second, all in real time. And the thing, I mentioned to you before, there's a theme in the theme about being real time. For me, I'm always obsessed about the value of data dwindles massively. So one of the hypotheses we present to OEMs is to say, don't give batch data at the end of journey where data will get lost. You need to, for example, you need to provide the data to us in real time. We'll take it in an unstructured raw format, and we'll then apply a common data model and identify key insights that we can present back to vehicle in real time to, for example, present an experience within the infotainment of the car. Or we can provide insights back to the OEM of, say, a critical parts failure in real time. So, we're seeing with an OEM real-time airbag failures. It's amazing to sort of see these insights coming out of vehicles.
And so, like, what does this? Is it like the software that's proprietary to you guys? Like, what is doing this real-time data process? Why can't someone else just like do kind of the same thing?
It's a real heavy lift. The idea of processing data is a heavy lift. You can't, you can spin up an AWS instance or a Google BigQuery or an Azure instance, but that doesn't give you, part of our IP, and it's patent pending, is our ability to take real-time data and to keep it structured. So, for example, we have 180 buckets, and when you take all this data in, and 500,000 data points a second, the data is getting dropped in all these buckets, and then I'm giving a very high level view of it, and then we standardize it, we sort it, we identify issues, and we remove the failures of data, and then we represent it back in this common data model. Well, those 180 buckets can get confused, so we need to make sure we maintain the integrity of those buckets. That's actually difficult. That's not something there's very few organizations that actually do genuine real-time processing of data at that sort of volume we process. We process more data in volume than, say, the New York Stock Exchange. So this capability of processing real-time data, and then then there's great outcomes. So we're working with some of the world's largest e-commerce and logistics companies to help them identify road closures in real time. We're working with some of the largest mapping companies, and we publicly talk about Microsoft. The reason why we work with mapping companies is that we tell them in real time if there's a lane closure or if there's congestion on the lane. Most mapping companies, and you can probably name the top three, they rely on machine learned batch processes. So they'll understand about when they think there's going to be congestion on a road, as opposed to saying we know there's congestion on the road. So having that sort of, and that massively helps you. So we're working with an OEM at the moment where they want to be able to identify in real time if there's temporary construction work on a road, so they can suggest the driver to reroute in real time. And that's the benefit of having this real time data. So the idea of processing real time data has become a real discipline and a real sort of standout for us in industry. And we're just starting to scratch the surface about the benefits of having been able to present that data back to the OEM themselves in a sort of cleaned up fashion.
Are there direct competitors to WEJO in the connected vehicle data space?
Yeah, I mean, there's competitors in any industry. No one else can claim to process 500,000 data points a second, 17 billion a day. No one else can claim to have processed over 500 billion miles of data. No one else can claim to have 22 real contracts in place with OEMs. So, we're competition's good. We're happy to have competition, but no one else can claim the even levels of gross billings we've got or the levels of data we're processing.
Now, you guys are doing this for connected vehicle data, but when you're talking about like logistics and roads and all this stuff, my head immediately goes to, well, WEJO stands for We Journey. Is there a world in which you guys expand from connected vehicle data? And like, is there a macro thesis for all types of data that could be processed? Is that kind of in the works?
Yeah, I mean, connected vehicle data, and we also take autonomous vehicle data, and we take EV data as well. It covers all areas of mobility. So, for example, we are taking micro mobility data. Our our key differentiator is that we don't take mobile data. We don't take mobile data as a proxy for how a vehicle or a mobility unit is moving around. We only take direct data from that particular unit. So whether it's a scooter, whether it's a heavy goods vehicle, whether it's a car or a motorbike, we get it directly from vehicle. And the benefit to that is that it's not just super high resolution and super real-time location data, but we also get these additional sort of data outcomes, whether it's airbag failures, whether it's, we now get up to 220 data points per vehicle. So we get a incredible rich insight from the vehicle.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just because like mobility is growing, right? And we're going to talk about EVs in a little bit, but like, it seems like when I think of like when you were saying we help a company know if there's like parts failure, that's one use case. We help a company know if there's like a road closure in real time, if there's a car crash on a road. Like there's so many different elements. And you think about mobility is what connects the world together. I mean, like if cars aren't moving in an efficient way, goods aren't getting here, people can't go to the places they need to go. So, I mean, it seems like you're attacking an industry that is very critical and that's only exponentially growing because of the data problem that you've said hasn't been solved yet. Yeah,
and it's about focus. So our focus now is vehicles. Our focus is the immediate use cases where there's value we can prove can be derived, and that the first one has been traffic management. We're now this year going into audience and media measurement. We're going to end-to-end insurance, but we're also being careful that we can't be all things to all people straight away. We've got a clear 5-year plan about how we'll slowly scale up. What we're definitely not short of is OEMs demand for us in terms of new products and OEM demand in terms of making data available to us. So now it's my job and the team at WEJO to scale the organization to service these broad demands. And the demands are also territories. I mentioned at the start, we're in Japan, we're opening up other parts of APAC, we're in the whole of Europe, we're in the UK, and we've got our founding market, the US, which is the majority of our revenues at the moment.
Speaking of revenues, I just want to clear up before we get into the Palantir discussion. How do you guys make money?
So we have two sides to our business. On the marketplace side of the business, we take data from OEMs with consumer consent, and we monetize to third parties. And we monetize both on anonymized data. So, for example, mapping companies pay us for trends where they can understand if a road's closed, for example. And we rev share typically 65% of the gross receivables back to the OEM. So that's one side of our business. And then the other side of business is solution based, where we've shown to OEMs we've got a strong discipline to be able to look after and protect data. So, for example, we're running global privacy management for an OEM, where we charge software services for doing that. So in effect, we're hosting their privacy now for all data that leaves their vehicles. So
almost like a traditional SaaS, you would say. That's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Traditional SaaS.
Got it. Okay, Palantir. Let's get to that topic. So I'm obviously amazed with Palantir. I think it's a phenomenal, wonderful product. I realized the partnership that you guys had with them back in November 2021. Can you, I guess, just explain why Palantir probably invested in you, and why have you chosen to come out? Why are you choosing to integrate Foundry within WEJO?
Well, we were talking before about the potential of thousands of use cases, such as parts failures. And when my conversation started with Palantir, one of the use cases they presented was Airbus. And Airbus is, there's 6,000 providers of parts to Airbus in terms of manufacturing a plane.
Right.
So this idea of, could Airbus provide critical feedback to parts providers of how the planes are performing? And I was talking to Cheyenne at Palantir, who's the chief operations officer. So, well, we should be thinking about the same problem in automotive. There are hundreds of what they call tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s in the supply chain. They would all like to have feedback of how their parts are performing in vehicle. In fact, one of WEJO's other investors is Hella. Hella are a €6 billion parts manufacturer. They manufacture laser lights. They manufacture ABS gear, they manufacture EV powertrains, all sorts really. So Hella was showing us a demand about how they'd like to understand better about how their parts perform outside an R&D environment. So we had the use case where we could show a tier 1 vendor wanting to understand that. And we had OEMs saying, actually we'd like to be able to have a better way of providing information back to our supply chain about how parts are performing, good and bad. I mentioned to you before about the example of an airbag failing at high speed.
Right.
So that sort of was where how our sort of relationship started with Palantir was what could Foundry do for us that would in effect supercharge our business or superscale our business. So Foundry is as a distribution platform of data insights. With Palantir can go so much quicker than WEJO in terms of the distribution they've already built, in terms of ERP platforms, and in terms of the scale of Foundry. So it became a perfect partnership where the core discipline of processing real-time data, it remains as WEJO. That is our core IP. But then we're now working with the likes of Palantir's Foundry platform to supercharge our distribution. The first use case is actually in the EV space, where we've announced something called the EV Infrastructure Operating System. And what we're learning there is that there's this real sort of there's this quandary around, there's this view that EVs have range anxiety. And I said, well, actually, it's not true. We know the data from EVs. A typical EV drives 40 miles a day. It doesn't need a battery capacity of 300 miles when it's typically used at 40 miles. The problem is that everyone is worried about leaving their car or their vehicle plugged in overnight. And the grid, the utilities companies are worried about that as well. And they're dreading the day when everyone gets home at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., plugs their vehicle in, goes up, and then it puts a huge drain on the grid. Right. What if there's intelligence in terms of distribution of data, which is what WEJO can do with Foundry? Then we can tell the energy company, or the energy company can tell us about when their grid has available capacity. We can inform the vehicle in real time when it should or shouldn't be charging itself. So the consumer doesn't have to worry about any of that. They just plug their car in, plug their vehicle in, go into their house, and then for all they know, their vehicle then charges up between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. to give it that top up to be able to do the distance of journey that vehicle's going to need to do the following day. So what Foundry's done is supercharge the distribution and brought us into new sectors as well, such as the utility sector.
The EV charging infrastructure thing is so fascinating to me because I saw this article in January and I was like, what are these guys doing? This is such an obvious issue. It's like, of course, if you plug in a bunch of cars at 5 p.m., it's going to be a huge strain on the grid. So if we're talking about the EV revolution, well, if you're just using more, greenhouse gas emissions to charge these things, it's like, it's a wash. It doesn't really matter. So it's like, if you could build a software that could intelligently tell the grid when to charge cars, I mean, it's a no-brainer. And then you're communicating with municipalities, you're communicating with other electric vehicle gas stations that exist, or electric vehicle charging stations that exist throughout the world. And you guys could quite literally become the operating system for how electric vehicles get charged. That would be the mission, correct?
Absolutely. You've said it better than me. So it's really funny. And just as an aside, I was at my 5-year-old boy's school. And I was talking to someone, and he's got a doctorate in energy, and he was telling me about the issues that the grid has in Europe, and we sort of we bounced around these ideas around the benefits to society of the answer is not for the grid to massively overinvest in infrastructure. Right. The answer is to have more intelligence about when the infrastructure needs to be able to deliver on an on-demand basis. So a great example of doing something good for society, and we have this mantra of what we call data for good, and we always think with that lens. We won't sell data to bad actors. We won't sell data without consent. This is a great example of this. Is that the governments globally are now incentivizing consumers to move to EV. The infrastructure has got to be able to keep up with that, and the answer isn't just throwing huge amounts of money at infrastructure upgrades, because they'll get it wrong. There needs to be much more intelligence as well. The Biden Infrastructure Act, there's $5 billion of budget to improve the infrastructure. That could get spent very quickly in the wrong areas. So this is about having a more intelligent approach to when does a vehicle need to be charged.
Now, theoretically, to give the audience a better understanding, like you said, WEJO is the IP and then Foundry is the distribution layer. Why can't Foundry do the IP in some way? Why can't WEJO do the distribution in some way? Why isn't there kind of a little bit of tension between you guys? Why is it a symbiotic relationship?
We've built an incredible number of automotive relationships. And Shyam has said it himself, we've got 22 automotive relationships, and Palantir haven't. So we found actually it's been a perfect combination. And and there is and also in terms of real-time processing of data, it's a much different discipline to process static data and then to be able to not have to deliver on an on-demand basis outcomes, than actually be able to process real-time data and to provide real-time outcomes. So that is a core IP that we do. Right. But also it's our broader automotive relationships. we've been doing this now for 8-9 years, building these really strong relationships with OEMs where we're trusted with their data asset. So it's been a great sort of combination. We've never once come across Palantir in a competitive situation with an OEM. And the OEMs are choosing us now as their preferred platform.
Right. No, that makes sense. It would kind of be like WEJO trying to provide data for the military. It's like that, but Palantir has been doing that. It's for the past 17 years. So it's just not a core competency at some point. And when I think of companies like Google, as like 95% of Google's business is still when you type in something, there's a little box that says ad right next to it. So it's like everyone wants to talk about Google becoming this huge company. It's like, yeah, they're a huge company, but they have to make sure that ad revenue is the thriving feature of Google, which means at some level, it's hard for them to compete in other areas because that takes away time, attention, and capital from driving more revenue from ads at some level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about this. So when you guys opened up a new product with Palantir, do you guys see yourself working with them in the future to create new operating systems? Because that seems like a major bull case for Palantir and a major bull case for WEJO if you own the platform that everything runs upon and you have multiple versions of that platform. Do you kind of see more of those in the future?
I think that'd be an interesting outcome for us both if we became a broader OS for mobility. Who knows what the future might hold.
Okay. I love that answer. Do you guys compete with Tesla?
Do we compete with Tesla? Really good question. I think everyone in the mobility ecosystem is competing with Tesla one way or another. Tesla want to do everything in-house. They're working with Liberty Mutual as a carrier, but they're doing a lot themselves internally. Tesla are not building broader marketplaces for data, but they could. So absolutely, Tesla is a key competitor.
But also you guys are processing data for so many other OEMs that Tesla's not really doing, right? They're kind of building their AI in-house, which is why.
Yeah, and in terms of processing, the amount of data we're processing, we've got, say, 16 million cars on platform. Right. They've got 2, 3. We're happy to be working with the majority of the OEMs in the top 10. Not just in the US, but globally, we've got incredible reach. We're looking to be the standard for connected vehicle, electric vehicle, and autonomous vehicle data. We're looking to be the standard that's going to enable the future generation of vehicles to communicate with each other where there is no standard in industry.
Yeah, and the good thing is I think the EV space is so big, there's going to be multiple winners in this. So there's room for that.
Absolutely.
All right, Richard, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. I know you got earnings coming up. You got a busy day, so thank you for taking time. I appreciate it a lot.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.